For this session, we have Professor Suryanarayan Murthy and Dr. Rima Hooja. Professor Suryanarayan Murthy is a conservation architect and is currently Professor of Architecture in JVR College of Architecture, Hyderabad. He is an independent consultant in the field of architecture, conservation, planning, and urban design under his proprietary organizations of Kshetra and IHSRDM. Specialized in documenting Indian traditional buildings and historical building knowledge systems, visiting faculty for the subjects of history of architecture, architectural graphics, and theory of human settlements. He is currently South Zone representative of ECOMOS India. Recently, in June 2021, under his leadership, has got the recognition of UNESCO World Heritage Site status for Kakatiya Rudreshwara Temple, Palampet, Telangana, as appointed by Department of Culture and Tourism, Government of Telangana. In December 2022, Kshetra was awarded with Sustainability Initiative of the Year 2022, along with Rainwater Project in Dubai WTC in Big Five Awards for the conservation of Bansila Pet Stepwell restoration. He is consultant architect now since April 2024 for temple towns of Bhadrachalam and Vemulavada redevelopment and rejuvenation. Dr. Rima Hooja is an archaeologist, historian, and author, and is managing trustee, Jaipur Virasat Foundation, fellow Royal Asiatic Society, former director, MSMS2, Museum City Palace, Jaipur, and president, ICOMOS India. Visiting faculty, School of Planning and Architecture, Delhi, and distinguished international academician, Minnesota University. A former member of India's National Monuments Authority and Central Advisory Board for Archaeology, Rima Hooja serves on various boards and trusts. Founding editor, Journal of Heritage Management, SAGE, Hooja has written 10 books and runs Animal Care Trust. I welcome you both to the session, and I guess we can start with Bhavyata's presentation now.
Right, thank you.
Should I begin, and can I share my screen?
Yes, you can. And to all the presenters, I would like to remind you that you have 10 minutes for the presentation. And I'll be giving you a reminder when 2 minutes are remaining. And please keep a track of the time. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Bhavyata Agrawal, and I'm here to give a presentation on the research titled as Exploring the Hindu Temples Constructed During the Nizam's Dominion in City of Hyderabad. I'm currently employed in Zurich, and yeah, so let's begin, and thank you for having me here. Okay, so the cultural heritage represents the identification of individuals in a continuum of space and time and has become a context in today's complex society where various multicultural cultures tangibly negotiate important historical narratives and meanings to improve their built environment. Uh, I'll be talking about the major developments within the city of Hyderabad, which took place precisely in 18th and 19th century. Uh, at present, the Islamic buildings are well maintained and recognized, but same is not the case with Hindu religious institutions. The purpose of my study is to take into account such prominent temple structures within the Muslim-dominated area that have managed to survive on their own, and by removing the lack of understanding that is retarding their growth. They are the hidden treasures, which are the living heritage of city, narrating on its own the story of its survival since past centuries. These temples, which were constructed with full support of Muslim ruler, is a creative construction of plural society. To the right, you see the map which demarcates or locates the various religious institutions, but dominating the Muslim ones, mostly the tombs, mosque, and the religious institutions. By religious institutions, I mean uh, the tombs, mosque, temple, or Nagar Khana, and travelers in or sarai, the pilgrims inn, or accommodation for people to come down to the complex and reside. The aim of my study is to explore the Hindu temples constructed within the Nizam's dominion in city of Hyderabad, patronized by the noblemen and administrative officials, to understand the historical, social, and cultural context of Hyderabad city during Nizam's dominion, and to identify the temples which were constructed during that period, to study the contribution of appointed nobles, mostly from north and northwest of India, during the Nizam's rule, and the temples or the institutions built by them. Sorry. To observe and study the identical features on the chosen case studies, and also to study the transformation and architectural style of these temples. Sorry. Also, my research process begin with preliminary research assessment and identify the research gap with appropriate literature review and collecting and studying relevant data. I analyze the data and findings based on the chosen case study, which led to the conclusion and synthesis of the expected results and recommendations. I would say the need. Our motherland cultural heritage in all its varied form is the common property of entire human race, and it requires duty on part of all of us to enrich it in every possible way. The temple's ritual and beliefs remain not only in history but also at present, and it affects the people's socio-cultural life, and it gives continuity to Indian tradition. Hindus institutions are currently under management of endowment department, and I feel the need to bring in view such prominent structures and for every one of us. Um, yeah. I would quickly go through the diagram, because to study the Hindu temples, I went through the beliefs of Hinduism and characteristics and components. To collect the data, I went for the traditional and conventional methods, and for the qualitative research, I opted for four types: the historical interpretative research, for to study the history of the site, community, building type, existing fabric of the structure, for ethnography related to data related. Sorry. Sorry. Can you
Somebody
repeat?
needs to mute themselves.
I muted him. You can continue, Bhavyata.
Okay. The ethnography. So for ethnographic data, I would say pundits and the people who are residing within the temple complex and getting being a part of regular cultural and religious practices. The case studies, chosen case studies gave me data based on the elements, architecture, and forms of temple style, and the narrative, which was mostly given by the patrons or the owners in past. They would give the evolution and transformation of temple complexes and reconcile with the clues of existing conditions. Based on this data and research, I analyzed the temples, mostly on the attributes of the site and temple design, and thus leading to the conclusions and recommendations. Okay, so 19th century. Hyderabad in 19th century, it was a south central princely state and also a capital at the time and fifth largest city in India. Development from Mughal Suba of Deccan, and the weakening of central authority in Delhi. So Asaf Jah I centralized administration of Deccan under his personal control. Talking about the administration during that time, the people who run the administration were the nobles or the patrons, which were appointed from different part of the country. And I would describe them in four different categories. That first is wakil or the agents, which represent the employees or the samsthans. Second were the nobles, they were the patrons of things or the jagirs which were given to them. Third were the army or military. Army or military was not centralized in the Mughal administration in 19th century, and it consists of unit of troops which were maintained by nobles on behalf of Nizam, mostly in outskirts or suburb of the city, outside the city wall. But they had a centralized financial records which were maintained mostly by the daftardars, and I would like to mention special caste which used to maintain them, called kayasthas. In 18th and 19th century, under Nizam rule, the Hyderabad flourished. There were development of religious institutions extensively. mostly including the tombs, mosques, and temples. Hindu temples in Hyderabad, I would say, under multi-religious environment, Hyderabad had wealth and the institutions that represent the patron power and perform function for state. Temples were designed and operated as urban court economy. They do perform function for the religious activities, and it was an abode of God and spirits, but it was also a source of urban economy of Indo-Muslims or Mughlai. They explain the traditions of pluralism within the state, no discrimination but equality in terms of patronage, and absence of religious favoritism under Nizam, thus creating a creative construction of plural society. The temples have been raided and attacked for political purpose, but I would say so they could be also developed and maintained and flourished because of the political reasons. So coming down to how I explained the topic in three different ways to have an overview of the topic. Then the main topic, like how the development of temples within the city took place. So sanads or grants were given by Delhi, Bijapur, Golconda, which came under the Nizams, and they become the richest person in that time, with aim to develop a distinct, peaceful, and maintained society of his own for smooth functioning and prosperity of city and its people. Nizams appointed military people, military persons or nobles, bankers, record keepers, and administrators from different corner of country, irrespective of caste, religion, or creed. Nizam sanctioned these jagirs or inam lands attained by nobles. These jagirs or inam land were the symbol of pride and power. It could also get transferred based on the people. Noblemen and appointed officials developed.
Bhavyata,
Yeah.
you have 2 minutes remaining.
Okay. Noblemen and appointed officials developed their palaces, residence as close as possible to the Nizam's residence. This led to the very compressed city. Thus, to have in control over in suburb of the city, they developed the garden cities, and they gave them as an inam land to the nobles. Religious and charitable institution had Nizam support and supervision. I've marked 20 temples which were developed specifically in 19th century on map of city of Hyderabad. Okay. I had to study about the historical context of temple architecture in Hyderabad region because it was mostly the it was an ideal type of architecture typology which could be seen in mostly all of the temples, although it was more of a simpler form and evolved and inspired form. I have chosen four case studies, and I could justify the reason for choosing four because I wanted to include temples which were developed by different kind of noble. One was the vakil, another was bank keeper, financial record keeper. Third was a military person, and fourth was Sitaram Bagh. So it was developed by Seth Puranmal. He was a Marwadi money lander, and the temple site exists on 20-acre garden with 20 feet high wall. Most of I would like to come down to a very short conversation about the case studies. So I'll try to bring in uh, the common features that they attain. But we'll go through the slides. So the second case study was a Kishanbagh temple built by Rajaram Khatri, and he was bank keeper. The third case is Jam Singh Venkateshwar Swami temple in Hyderabad, which was maintained by Jam Singh, a military person, and Rambagh temple Attapur, which was maintained by a vakil. I tabulated the features and pictures to have an analysis on common attributes. So concluding to the coming to the findings, the site selection. So this is um, like my analysis of all the case studies and the common features or attributes they attain. Not surprisingly, the property includes a mosque or tomb over the site. The site should incorporate a water body, step well, or bawdi. The site was an enam land or jagir for noblemen who construct temples with full support of Nizam ruler, and it exists in the outskirts of the city mostly. It consists of gardens and agricultural land, and they are developed in those sites of enam land or jagir, which are directly connected through a working road. They also had the processions, annual festivals, and Muslims and Hindus used to become part of all of them. Present conditions and issues, so the connectivity of temple and its complex with the adjoining mosque or tomb are which are in close proximity creates a psychological and religious rebels in mind in 20th century. The water body within the temple complex is not in function at all in most of the cases. Gopura condition, multiple oil paint layer of the stone column in temple's constructed area. We could see all of these factors through pictures clearly. Uh, I would like to go through the common features and architecture style.
Bhavita, please try to conclude soon.
So they had the Garud Stam, Dwaja Stam mostly in front of the temple. Just outside the temple resides a small mandapa used for Kalyanam. Main temples also include the typical features of temple, including Garbhagraha, Antarala, Sabha Mandapa. The columns within the temple can be seen in different styles, beginning with a simple form of Kakatiya architectural style. These temple complexes are walled temple complexes and they had large entry gateways. So, concluding, the most remarkable medieval temple complexes in walled city of Hyderabad, they were the cult center of regional significance and are the living heritage. They attracted both Hindus and Muslims, and I would like to specify not only the people but also Nizams and the patrons used to participate in multicultural programs. They create. So I would say they are example of creative construction of plural society and an amalgamation of regional architectural expressions because people came down to this place and it gives a sense of identity and continuity subjected to process of degradation with time and they need an important tool to conserve and protect them. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Bhavyata. I would like to invite Aahee Sapru to present her research.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
All right, perfect. I'll just share my screen as well. Mm. Um, can I ask the previous participant to stop sharing their
Yes.
screen?
Bhavita, can you please stop sharing your screen?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. So, I'm Ahi. I'm a master's student.
Can you
Yeah,
can you do a full screen?
for the
Click on
screen,
slideshow.
sorry, the PPT, right?
Yeah, just click on slideshow and it should be fine.
All right, visible, hopefully.
Yes, this is.
All right, thank you, sir. So, I'm Ahi. I'm a postgraduate student of Archaeology and Heritage Research and Management from SHRM, previously known as Dhiram in Delhi. And I mostly pursue ancient Indian archaeology, historical archaeology, Indian Indic religion and culture, and anything which has got to do with historiography. And currently, I am working on Himalayan solar temples and their spatial analysis, as well as doing some transliteration works for Brahmi and Sharda script. So my current this presentation of mine is focusing on the Martand Surya Mandir that's in the Anantnag district of Kashmir, and why it's extremely necessary to conserve this specific piece of history. So the when one wants to reach the location, one would assume that they would just have to mention the temple Martand by its name and you'll reach there, but that's actually not true because the region has become an upper-branch for the term Martand, and it's now mutton. So you have to refer to it as mutton, and whenever you say that, they take you to a modern cluster of temples, where you have Surya Mandir, you have a temple dedicated to Lord Shiv, then you have a Ram temple, but they do not exactly take you to this ancient site. So how does one navigate the way to the exact archaeological site? You have to refer it to as Pandav Lair. Now, Pandav Lair means the house of Pandavas, and well, it's anything but house of Pandavas. So it's the
Ahi,
locals who,
just a
yeah,
second. Are you changing slides or are you
no, not
still on
right
the
now.
first slide? Okay,
I'm
all
still
right.
on the first slide.
All right, just checking.
Okay. So you have to refer it to as Pandav Lair, and it is not a house, first of all, and it has no relations to Pandavas, which I will be revisiting later on in this presentation. So the temple is located on a plateau. It has a beautiful, it overlooks the entire city, has beautiful vision around it. It's magnificent, it's huge. It is everything that you would want a temple to be. And it was constructed by Lalitaditya, which is mentioned by Kalhan in his chronicle. But Kalhan also mentions that there was a Martand which was built by a predecessor of Lalitaditya, which from a different dynasty was known as Ranaditya. So there is a possibility that there are two Martands and we do not know about the other one, or it was a smaller Martand which then Lalitaditya came along and created something as lavish and as magnificent as he did with the Anantnag temple. Further, the Martand temple has the basic structure of having like a huge great gateway, has a colonnaded perimeter, then it has the main shrine and certain elevated platforms along with a water tank. I'm just going to look for it. Yeah, so this water tank that you can see, this is the main shrine, the main temple with the Ardhamanda, Antral, and the Garbhagriha. And this is the water tank. This water tank is connected with three stoned channels, three visible stone channels which run outside of the temple. So obviously for dragging in water and maintaining it, but unfortunately, whenever consulting local historians and other people, they say that there is actually no water source nearby, which is quite interesting. So it's possible that there was some river channel or some water body which existed around the temple, but over the time kind of got filled up. The other interesting thing about this temple is that for a Surya temple, this temple, the idol does not face east, it faces west, which is extremely interesting. As you can see this in this image, the temple, the interiors of the shrine is in darkness. It's in pure darkness. You cannot exactly look inside. So you have to go in and then you have to see, of course, because the roof is not there, so there is plenty of light to see inside. But it is quite interesting as to why this temple was created in such a way. Other than that, because majority of the temple is destroyed, we find sculptures. We face sculptures of the Trinity, the Hindu Trinity, Ganga and Yamuna, and we find a very pretty sculpture of Arun, not in the Martand form, but in his Arun form, where he's riding the chariot with seven horses. Now, Martand and Arun are two different manifestations of Surya, which is also very interesting because we do not see many sculptures related to Surya in his own temple. We have no idea what the idol exactly looked like. From the first look, you cannot tell what this temple, who the temple is dedicated to. You have to kind of go through the historical accounts that we have, which mention it to be Martand. So that is also quite interesting about this. Other than that, we also find sculptures of yakshas. And yaksha pujan is something which is very endemic to Kashmiri Hindus in a sense that they also continue with Vedic practices and Shaivite practices. Now, exactly in Vedic practices, they do not acknowledge the existence of yakshas as divine creatures. They see to them as something which is supernatural, but not exactly something which has to be close to God. So this temple is unique in its own because there's no other Kashmiri temple like it. Uh, it'll be a Puranic temple, it could be a Devi's temple, but you will not find their depictions. You will find Gandhars, but you will not find Yakshas. If I find the image, I'll definitely kind of show that to you. So yeah, this is the debris that has been lying around the entire campus. You can see the colonnaded perimeter. And there is also an argument that these perimeters are they are 84 in number and that they used to house a shrine dedicated to some god. This is that shrine that people that scholars argue are 84 in number. I kind of digress from it. I don't think that it's a shrine because then there are elevated platforms exactly for other than the main shrine that exist in the campus, and which is very true of any Panchayatan style temple, also very uh, connected to the Vedic and Puranic practice. So why would you have 84 extra shrines when you already have four extra elevations? Or maybe probably they were shrines, and the elevated platforms that I'm talking about. Okay, I do not have, I guess, the image for the elevated platform. Um, yeah, unfortunately, it's not there. But it's right next to this water tank. The elevated platforms were probably altars, but then how many altars do you actually need? Because there are smaller elevated platforms there as well. So I don't think that this is something that needs to be revisited. And why 84 specifically? I mean, it could be possible that Aruna's chariot has 12 spoked wheels and is pulled by seven horses, and then you do 12 into 7 and it becomes 84. Or one could argue that there are 28 nakshatras and the sun takes a little more than 3 days to cross over to the next nakshatra, and that becomes 84. But then, how do you argue that it's a shrine? I mean, whose shrine is it dedicated to? So, my general idea is that it is probably not a shrine, but more of ornamental sculptures or even icons placed there for worship and for ornamental purposes. Other than that, it is also extremely unique in its own nature because the architecture of the temple is very Greco-Roman inspired, and you see a lot of Gandharan influences. The along the colonnaded peristyle and like higher arches, trefoil arches, we see a lot of Gandharan
Aahee, you have
inspired
2 minutes
sculptures.
remaining.
Yeah, okay. You have very Gandharan inspired sculptures. So we know that Kashmir was very close and had quite proximity wise as well, and quite good relations with the Yavans and Gandharan art. We know that. But we also know that Lalita Aditya was quite interested in Kashmir, in Chinese culture, and had sent out ambassadors to China. So there is also a possibility that there is some Chinese influence in it. We just do not know much enough about it because, to be honest, the site is protected in a way that there is no external damage anymore to the structure, but it's not preserved in a way where it can be studied well. So that is one of the problems with the temple. Other than that, this temple opens a plethora of questions which are very relevant to Indian history, Indian culture, and Kashmiri history as well. Lalitaditya was one of the most powerful rulers, probably after the Gupta age, and he was a staunch Vaishnavite. He Why would a Vaishnavite construct a Vedic temple in the heartland of Shaivism and Buddhism? This is not to say that he did not construct Shiv temples or Buddhist chaityas. He did. He did them quite beautifully. But why a Vedic temple and to such a magnificent degree? The temples he made in Panditran or Parihaspura, they kind of make sense. They're not as huge and magnificent as this temple. But why specifically Surya? The other question that we have is that Kashmiri Pandit literature does not trace any ritualistic practices related to the temple. So, either from their bhajans or from any historical chronicle or from some scripture that they might have, they do not mention any ritualistic practices related to Surya specifically. You'll find it for other gods, you'll find it for other temples, but nothing for Matan, which is extremely interesting because it's a huge temple. It must have been quite a lively temple as well. So, what were the practices related to this area? We do not know. Other than that, we this is also stonework. Kashmir now does not continue stonework; it prefers wooden work along with fine arts. So sculpture, any knowledge that the valley had for stonework, stone masonry, stone engineering, or even for sculptural work, it's quite lost now. And this is limestone. You don't listen, you don't get to hear about Kashmir using limestone constructing huge like buildings or even just sculptures for aesthetic works. They do not. So it is a lost knowledge as well for the valley. And so this entire temple like needs to be revisited for the same reason that there are so many there's so many curiosities related to this temple. Why is it? How is it? The roof that we know, this is the roof that we see, especially in the niches, they have it kind of also lets us know what the temple roof would have looked like. So we know it's going to be a gabled roof with a conical superstructure, but then that begs the question, how would people look or observe the deity when it's shrouded in darkness? I mean, because it's not facing east, it's facing west. And it's something which is extremely interesting, so much so that even after rechecking it multiple times, I still feel like I've done some mistake and it's probably not a west-facing temple. So why so many digressions have been done from what we generally think to be would be mainstream? So I think that is the reason why we need to preserve this temple and we need to revisit it as much as possible. And these are the west, east, south, and north facing, respectively. This is the main structure from the three sides. You can see the ornamentation there quite well. Yeah, right here you can see a sculpture. I found this in the debris lying, I think, on the northern side of the temple. And well, we do not see such sculptures in any temple, in any other Kashmiri temple. If you do visit any other Kashmiri ancient temple, you do not find it to be as um, ornamental as is Martand. Now, the entire curiosity behind the Pandav lair is also very interesting because it's Hindus also who believe that it is House of Pandavas and they call it as so. And when you ask why exactly, they say because there are 5 platforms, there are 5 elevations that Pandavas will. And it's very interesting because there are Panchayatan style of temples and they're completely, ignoring that entire aspect. So there has been a sort of trickle down of misinformation amongst generations where they're misidentifying their own culture and their own religious practices. And now, Martin is not the only temple which is privy to that moniker of Pandav Lake. There's a temple in Avantipura known as Avanti.
Aahee, can you please
Yeah.
try to wind up soon?
Sure. So there are other sites as well which are known as Pandav Lair. So there is a lot of questions and mysteries behind the temple, and that's why I think it needs to be culturally preserved. That's it. Thank you. I'll just stop sharing.
Thank you, Aahee. You can stop presenting now. Yeah. I now request Sravani to please present her paper.
May I know if the screen is visible?
Sorry?
May I know if the screen is visible?
Yeah, your screen is visible.
Good morning. My name is Sravani Naraparaju. I'm a conservation architect working for the last 6 years, and I own my own practice called Punaravardhan Studios. I am here to present about Charminar's pedestrian project. So it is named as Heritage, Livelihoods and Urban Design, Lessons to be Learned from Charminar's Pedestrian Project. So to give a small understanding about Hyderabad, it's the capital city of Telangana, and it is in South India. So to give you, Charminar is listed in UNESCO as part of the Qutub Shahi monuments. It is built in 1591 in Islamic architecture by Muhammad Quli Qutub Shah, the 5th Sultan of Qutub Shahi dynasty. To understand Charminar, it is very important to understand how the city have developed. Charminar was allegedly the first building built by Muhammad Quli Qutub Shah when he shifted his capital from Golconda Fort because his previous capital was overly populated, there was inadequacy of water and plague that forced Quli Qutub Shah to construct a new city. So the first building that was constructed was Charminar as a gateway, and then the city developed around Charminar. In the center, the 4 roads are built around it in 4 different directions. The monument is called the Arc de Triomphe of the East, deriving its name from the 4 minarets, which are in the concept of the Char Bagh. And that the monument is not alone in itself. The city of Hyderabad was planned along Charminar as its center. There was a grid pattern that was designed to divide the city into each quarter, for a specific purpose. Royal palaces and state offices were designated on the northeast quarter, whereas northeastern part was specified for residences of nobles. The main streets were lined up with shops, mosques, baths, and schools, which are even evident till today. Heritage. Why? Because it is a continuous use of historic spaces. Charminar is surrounded by bustling bazaars, homes, and religious places that are actively used even today. If the traditions are blended with modern lives, that is, area preserves age-old traditions, crafts, cuisines, while adapting to the modern urban challenges. There is cultural and religious harmony. It is a melting pot of communities and traditions. You have economy activity rooted in history, because in the beginning, when Charminar was converted into a city, there were marketplaces which are developed. Even today, those marketplaces are running in iconic markets like Lad Bazaar, Pater Gatti have existed for centuries. And even today, they sell pearls, bangles, Deccani cuisines even today. Social interactions in historic settings, unlike preserved monuments that are isolated, Charminar is integrated into everyday life where people live, work, and socialize around it. And it hosts numerous festivals and religious processions and events, keeping historic and cultural narrative alive. To give a little glimpse about the architectural significance of Charminar, it is built in Indo-Sasanic architecture. It has Islamic architecture components in form of arches, minarets, and domes. It also has Hindu architecture in the form of ornamentation. A multi-sided column are raised on each corner of the structure, and each minaret is accessed via a spiral staircase on its interior walls. It is also very interesting to note that the main roads lining the Charminar are also built in stone structures. However, as time went by, and upper structures were constructed in RCC, and then there were boardings came up on the heritage facades, which is very obstructive. In 2017, ASI and GHMC started what is called as Charminar Pedestrian Project. The aim of the project is to achieve a quality environment which is accessible, safe, secure, and aesthetic. The main aim of this proposal is to reduce vehicular traffic in the vicinity, thus in order to protect the heritage structures. It objectified its CPP in the following ways. It said that it wanted to create a four-wheeler free zone, improve infrastructure such as wider sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, and improved lighting. Restoring historically significant buildings like Charminar's facade and the Unani Hospital. It also wanted to improve streetscape while recreating the historic shopping streets. It wanted to segregate traffic into inner and outer ring roads, create a safe and accessible environment, and create an aesthetic urban environment. It undertook a few major works, like to improve the pedestrian infrastructure, to enhance the aesthetical appeal by installing street furniture and landscape, to dedicate a parking space for vehicles to be parked outside the pedestrian zone, to preserve the historic charm by aiming to make Charminar and its surrounding areas and also promote sustainable tourism practices, and to boost local economy by improving the area's infrastructure and aesthetic appeal. However, however, after the research, I found out that not all of the though works are done, they have received a big backlash. The major drawbacks are CPP have not involved local community in its planning process or during the planning and everything. The minimum stakeholder engagement is not there. It has failed to actively involve local residents, shopkeepers, and other stakeholders in the planning process. What happened was many local vendors and residents felt excluded and were apprehensive about what was happening, and they did not have a positive opinion on CPP. And even the plan was poorly implemented because it was delayed extensively due to various reasons. And what they did was they put temporary barricades for stoppage solution, but then it was not a long-term fix. So it was a problem both monetarily and also it created issues for the local residents. they parking solutions were created, but then it was insufficient. The project did not adequately address parking needs for visitors and residents, which caused congestion in the nearby areas. It led to jams in areas like Patergatti, Lad Bazar, and Shah Ali Banda. The major impact was it have displaced the street vendors. Street vendors are the livelihood of Charminar. After 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, the streets of Charminar is lit with street hawkers who sell everything from bangles to food items to traditional clothes. They form the intangible heritage to the monument. What they did was they relocated the street vendors, disrupting their livelihood and also removing the intangible cultural heritage from the fabric in itself. They relocated the vendors and they complained about insufficient spaces, and in that they've also lost their customers, because the tourists who come to the Charminar are their customers. So they did not have the visibility when they were relocated. And also encroachment returned soon after the clearing drives. During COVID, all the street vendors who were displaced came back to the monument. So it was a failed proposal which have happened. And then the modern installations like railings, billboards were criticized because they were insensitive to the fabric of the monument and the place. There was also no public awareness because many locals were unaware of the project's goals and benefits, which led to resistance and non-cooperation. This happened because they've not involved the community, the residents, street hawkers, or the shopkeepers in the planning process. So who are the communities that are affected by CPP? Firstly, the residents, because they did not know what was happening. It is very important to note that the residents were the descendants from the people who living in Charminar when it was built. So they used to have shops in the first floor and they built houses they used to have shops in the ground floor and they built houses in the first floor. Now, when the shops were removed, they did not have a livelihood to continue. So the areas that are affected are old neighborhoods like Shah Ali Banda, Patergatti, and Mughlapura. Many generational families are deeply tied to the area's cultural and historical roots. So they have removed an important fabric from the monument in itself. The street vendors and hawkers who sell bangles, pearls, street food, and traditional garments, they've lost their livelihood because tourists and regular local shoppers are the one who visits these small shops. And the shopkeepers and small business owners who sell textiles, jewelry, spices, and traditional crafts. And
Shavni, you
the
have
shops,
2 minutes remaining.
okay. And the shops also have artisans like who make bangle makers and zari workers who are also removed from the space. So they received a backlash from the residents because they have very difficulty in accessing their homes. Street vendors and hawkers lost their livelihood and reduced in visibility, and they had a sense of insecurity among them. Also, small business owners, because they could not have any parking spaces in the pedestrian zone, so the number of people visiting the shop decreased, and the artisan communities, because they had lower customers and they have economic strain on them. So I looked at two projects for the best practice methods. One is Gamla Stan in Stockholm. It is very similar to Charminar, which have an historic fabric. So what they looked at is they looked for preservation of historic architecture, pedestrian-friendly infrastructure, and they evolved into mixed-use development. They had community engagement in every step of the process. They opted for sustainable tourism practices and cultural heritage conservation. In India, I looked into Charminar Chandni Chowk redevelopment plan in New Delhi. So what it looked at is it looked for hybrid pedestrianization. That is, it gave priority to pedestrians at the end of the day, but it also allowed two-wheeler vehicles into the precinct area. It had integrated utilities, that is, all the utility networks like drainage, water pipes, sewer catches, and CCTVs are being enabled into a single utility network. They had many public amenity facilities were provided like lighting, paved pathways, landscape features like seating, and dedicated parking spaces. They had an inclusive design approach where community engagement is achieved in an inclusive approach. They also had comprehensive implementation with a detailed traffic management plan. Adaptive reuse of historic buildings is done where historic buildings and facades are restored and reused to promote and preserve the area's traditional characteristics. So I've talked about a few policies which could have been used in CPP to make it better or to have it been worked. To first involve community and stakeholders in their everyday discussions and in every step of policy making, to have a balanced traffic management, to integrate vendor policy into the CPP, to use sustainable urban design practices such as providing public toilets and wash basin bins, to have living heritage integration, that is, design the space in such a way that the local craftsmen, residents are all involved in the design itself, to use a phased implementation plan uh, the so that the to start the policies in smaller ways and to make it to adapt over time, and to use visitor management technology so that one can understand how many people are coming and how many people are visiting the monument, and
Shavni,
also to
please try
provide
to conclude.
financial, yeah, and to also provide financial support for locals and promote cultural tourism. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would now invite Kavya to start presenting.
Yeah, just 1 second. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, just 1 second. Um, yeah. So
Yes.
before I start, I'd like to apologize if there's any disturbance in the background because I'm outside right now. So my name is Kavya, and I'm from Bangalore, and I just recently graduated with a bachelor's in history with honors from Azim Premji University. So the article that I'll be presenting is called Hoysala Temples in the Public and Popular Discourses, and this is actually an excerpt from the thesis that I wrote for my college honors project. So before I get into the topic itself and my research question and lots of the other things, I'd like to build a little context on the two temples that I'll be discussing. So the Hoysala temples are temples in the Hassan district in Karnataka that have recently gotten the UNESCO World Heritage title in 2023. Yeah, and I will be discussing two temples out of the three which received the title. The ones that I'll be discussing are the Chanakeshwara temple in Belur and the Hoysaleshwara temple in Halibut. So one was constructed by a king named Vishnuvardhana, who was supposed to have been the first king to unify the Hoysala kingdom in 1117, and the other by an army chieftain of Vishnuvardhana named Ketamala. So the slide that I have on right now is just to talk about this this phenomenon of continuous construction, as there were so many contributors who were sort of contributing to the temples. So getting to my research question, so I will be looking at popular and public discourse, and what I mean by that are representation of characters and the stories of these Hoysala, not just the kings emerging from the time, but also the stories represented in different forms of public media like school textbooks, social media influences, etc. And I'm trying to understand how these discourses shape the way that the temples are reconstructed in the eyes of different people interpreting the temples. So I will go through some of the sort of findings that I have gotten from the different types of popular adaptations. So the image in the background is actually of the Sala myth itself. So the Sala myth is supposed to be the origin myth of the Hoysala dynasty, and it essentially speaks of a boy called Sala who bravely kills a tiger which enters the area he was studying in. Which the story also, it's slightly long story, but the story also gives the name Hoysala itself. So why this is why I'm calling it a myth is because we don't have any evidence of it actually happening. And also, interestingly, it emerges only from the time of Vishnuvardhana, who was the fourth or fifth king of the Hoysala dynasty. So this particular myth is very popular among the tour guides in the two temples, as it is a very noticeable. It was supposed to be the Hoysala emblem, and it is a very noticeable sculpture placed in all of these temples that I'll be talking about. So Jakanacharya was supposed to have been a mythological, extremely skilled sculptor of predominantly what we call the Vesara style of architecture, which is a style that the Hoysala temples are constructed in. So what has actually happened is the story of Jakanachari has become so prevalent that there is a whole style known as the Jakanachari style, and this is common from the time of the Chalukyans, the Kalyani Chalukyans from around 900 AD all the way till the Hoysalas, the end of the Hoysala dynasty, which is around 1250s. So this is one of the popular adaptations that I have chosen. It is the Amar Chitrakatha book for. I'm sorry, did I get disconnected? Hello.
You're back, but you were out for a bit.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, so wait,
Can you tell me where I stopped? I'm sorry.
so there was some disturbance.
Okay, I'll just continue it from here then.
Yes. Yeah.
That's okay. Okay.
Please go ahead.
So the screen that I have up now is the Amar Chitrakatha book. It was so essentially what I'm trying to show here is two different characters from the sort of Hoysala mythos that have been put together in this book. So the Sala myth as the origin myth of the Hoysala dynasty, and Queen Shantala, who's supposed to be the queen of Vishnuvardhana, also represented in the same book, in reference to the different temples that arise. So Queen Shantala, again, like from the Amar Chitrakatha book, she is supposed to have been the chief queen of Vishnuvardhana, who was the first king to unify Hoysala dynasty. And there are a lot of sort of legendary stories about her, about how she was this incredible dancer. She was called Natya Rani. About how the famous Hoysala Madanikas were supposedly modeled out off of her. And there is this almost very mysterious story of her jumping off the Shivaganga cliffs, committing suicide for various different reasons. And Kuvara Lakshma is supposed to have been what we call the Garuda of Veerabalala II, who was another Hoysala king. And he is supposed to have committed self-sacrifice when his king passed away. So he is also a very important character in the discourse of the tour guides in Halebedu, because there is a memorial stone for Kuvara Lakshma in that. So a slight deviation from just the popular discourses are the public representations of them in different I've seen Hoysala and school textbooks and social media influencers first. So what is very interesting is that the discourses about the Hoysala kings are not just from sort of historical textbooks. They appear in fine art textbooks. The stories appear in Kannada textbooks, and obviously social science and history also have the representations. So what is interesting is some of these mythological and legendary tales have found very important parts in both the history and Kannada discourses as important documents of Kannada culture and history. So yeah, and so in the news article, since the temples recently got the UNESCO title, that is a very important sort of topic. And also there is a lot of information about both the characters of the different sort of kings specifically and different sort of inscriptions that were found during this period. And also, there's a very important festival that happens in the Belur temple called the Brahmotsava festival, which what I find very interesting is the amount of influence that the social media influencers have had in the tourists who have visited the temples in the past, I would say, 5 years. So what has happened is these social media influencers have to some extent had unbacked I guess stories about these temples, and
Kavya,
a
we
lot
have 2 minutes remaining.
okay, great. And a lot of these tourists have come to the temples to see if this is true to some extent, and if there is any legitimate historical backing to what these social media influencers say. So just to conclude, what seems to have happened is whether it's a popular discourse or a public discourse, they seem to have shaped the temple as symbols of cultural and social identity. So the Kannada the temples are seen as very important in Kannada media and Kannada cultural representation. And also, popular media seems to have been a very, very impactful in tourism in the sense that they visit thinking that there might be any clues or something like that if they were to visit the temple. So yeah, these are my references. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavya. I now request our session chairs, Professor Murthy and Dr. Hooja, to please share their remarks for the participants.
Thank you. I'll wait for.
I request all the presenters to please turn on their videos.
So anyway, I'm going to start while everyone is joining. Yes. It's been. Let me have my headphones back on in case of interruptions. So this has been a fascinating session, but just to clarify, we've had 4 papers, and the ones who've not presented will either be marked absent for now, or you'll fit them in at some other point, right? We'll just go by the 4 we've had, and it's been an interesting discussion. I'm going to leave it to Dr. Suryanarayan Murthy to take it on from now. I do have some remarks which I'll come to, and I think we want to have time to open this for the other. We're a total of 14 in this room at present. Surya, over to you for now.
Yeah, sure. I think all the 4 presenters, they have done their presentation well studied. I would like to come one by one. The first presentation was by Bhavyata on John Singh Sitaram Bagh and Kishan Bagh temple, where she has focused on classifying and bringing out temple architecture, especially during early 20th century of Hyderabad, where she identified about 21 temples or so. It's a very good study. I can say it is a first time study going into, though there were people who made some studies on these temples. This certainly needs appreciation because it has brought out some new aspects how the people during early 20th century created their background apart from the existing temple architecture, like Kakatiya architecture, how they integrated into their structures. Directly, it is not a derivative of Kakatiyas, but it is a reflection of their position, their rank, and from where they are coming from. All those factors contributed to the making of these temples. It's a very good study. I have a small question to Bhavyata. So why she has not taken up all the examples? Because it would have given her all the 21 temples. Instead of limiting to only 3 temples, if she takes up all the temples, the context, you would be able to generate more objective conclusions rather than only 3 examples. Yeah, there is a one small question, and after that I will go to Aahee study. If she could answer just a brief this question.
Yeah, sure, sir. So thank you for the question, and thank you for appreciating the research, actually. To your question, like I had listed 21 temples, I've marked them on map, but I think I was restricted in getting the resources, and also I was working on the research during COVID time. So one of the restriction was that. I chosen 4 case studies based on having a variety in the types of nobleman we have in the administration system in Hyderabad during 19th century. But of course, I would like to extend the research and do more objective research with all the cases. I'll try to look into it, and yeah, but at present I have 4 cases which were from different nobles. So as you mentioned, Kishan Bagh, I did extensive documentation for that particularly, and that's how I came down to the research topic. So yeah, I would
Yeah.
like to study all of them. It's interesting in a way. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, good.
Surya, before you go to the next speaker, let me give my comments to Bhavyata so that we'll maximize time. And yes, I do want to congratulate you on your very methodological way, very systematic way rather, of presenting the aims, objectives, the methodology. And since I don't know that much about Hyderabad as Surya does, I'm glad he asked this question. I made a note of it, that there are 21 temples of this kind of 18th, 19th century. There may be more. So, yes, if you are extending this study, do try and bring in the socio-historical economies of the 4 groups that are involved as patrons of the 4 examples that you have. And then extending that further to because you have talked about the multi-cultural, multi-plural society that Hyderabad was at that time. So that will give a very good picture on this. So that brings me to the question really, are you intending to work on this more?
I was intending honestly to work on one particular temple case, so I get more detailed insight on it. But yeah, after sir's question and insight, I think I'll have to rethink about it.
Yeah, so whether you work on one or you work on all,
Yeah.
do try and make it as comprehensive a study as possible. I think we have great potential here. for something that will be really, it will be essential for understanding Hyderabad.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. Okay,
Thank you.
Surya, over to you now.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a very relevant point you have mentioned. Coming to next presenter, Aahee. There is a lot of scope for this subject. Obviously, being lot of work happening now, currently, in the recent times, for the past 3-4 years, many researchers are actually free and they're able to work on these things more prominently as compared to maybe in the last 30-40 years. So this kind of study is very much important, and to bring out, as you mentioned rightly, that it is going to change the whole history of temple architecture also. If you go into further details, and if you attempt these things with more of line drawings, because the line drawings, what happens with line drawings, apart from photograph, I am sure are you an architect?
I'm an archaeologist, but I do have to deal with
I
structural
think,
drawing.
okay, fine. I think if you use more of line drawings, because there were many archaeologists when they describe something and when they interpret something with line drawings, they do it in a completely different way. And when they operate with just only photographic interpretation, there will be a lot of limitation in your, though there is, you must have understood and you are trying to interpret, but that interpretation may not come out. That is only observation I would like to make. I don't have any questions. And if Rimaji wants to make any questions, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Surya. So, Aahee, very interesting because I have seen Martand Sun Temple or Mutton a very long time ago. And the fact that the legend has been there for a long time is intriguing. So I know that this is run by the ASI. Do look up the old ASI records. Do check out on what the American Institute of Indian Studies has in its Gurgaon collection, because Dhaki, sir, and these people had done, they have a big photographic collection also. But you've raised some interesting questions. And one thing that you might want to look at is King Lalita Muktapid. Also, he was a big, like he was a warrior and everything, but he was a major builder. So there are several places attributed to him. You could do a comparative study. You could also look for other historical sources for who has done that. The point about water is interesting because Kashmir used to be known for the way it had, the hydraulics, the way it had canals and it tapped history. And again, in Lalita Muktapid's time, there was a major, like canals, hydraulics, the works. So this is 8th century, but it carries on. So do check it out. Easy reference, of course, would be that old study, still valuable, the Center for Science and Environment's thing on Anil Agrawal and Sunita Narayan on water, because that talks about Kashmir. And from the point of view of what you are looking at, what you are re-examining, again, if the Panchayatna comes in, you've got these 5, these are intriguing things, but look at your historical resources along with this. The Yaksh part, again, is a intriguing lead, because Yaksh is known and then becomes invisible and then is known again through Indian history from whichever, maybe the 6th, 5th, 6th century, certainly. So I think there's a potential here, and do carry on with the study. Where are you based?
I'm based in Delhi currently for my studies.
Okay. So then you have access to the AIIS at Gurgaon.
I do.
And check those out. And is this going to lead to another study, or this is just one of the papers you worked on?
This is just one of the papers that I worked on, and it's also a sort of a fragment of my dissertation right now because, as I introduced myself with, that I'm currently researching Himalayan solar temples and the spatial analysis. So when I was going through Martand, I just saw some sort of a dissonance within the information that I found and my observations. So I just thought I'll write a paper on it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All the best. Back to you, Surya.
Yeah, I think American Institute of Indian Studies, they have done a lot of work and supported by, as I mentioned, the line drawings, Medhakis and other works. It would help, and obviously, I think for your dissertation, it will add better interpretation scope. Yeah, we'll move to the next presenter. That is Sravani. Sravani on again on Hyderabad. Both Bhavyata and Sravani chose from my place where I am speaking right now from Hyderabad. There are some, I think, observations where you need to concentrate on. I would suggest because some facts, as I have been part of this project also, Charminar Pedestrianization project since 1999, when Vastu Shilpa Foundation, the B.B. Doshi's firm, I just graduated from SPA Delhi, and I was part of the ground team working for the documentation with Vastu Shilpa Foundation, and later I worked on partially on the project also in 2005-7 onwards for 4-5 years. So with that experience, I'm not possessive about it, but I'm talking about on the project mainly is there are some facts. It all started in 1999 and 2000. You mentioned that it started in 2017, or maybe you have mentioned in my message also in your reply message that it started in implemented in 2017. 2017 is partial implementation, but it all started in 2000. And what the only thing what I would like to just mention is for Indian context, the case study method or comparative case study method may hold good for actual process part. Process part of it, case studies may hold good, but for the study part and the actual implementation, the architecture and community understanding and the context understanding, I don't think case studies would really, the alien case studies, outside case studies may be of help. You have mentioned Chandni Chowk case study. That is partially useful. But if you bring in some foreign case studies, I don't think they will be of real comparison, because you were not able to really bring in that kind of the real comparison between the context. So the contextual relevance is going to play a major role, whether it is a successfully implemented project or a failure. To comment upon or to bring out conclusions of which is implemented for 25 years as a failure or as a successful thing, I don't think that will, because Chandni Chowk has its own context, Jaipur has its own context, and Hyderabad has its own context. The reasons for why something doesn't happen in one place and something happens at another place it is not because of the comparative observations, it is because of the context itself. So case studies do not hold good in terms of conclusive remarks on any kind of whether this kind of researchers can really incorporate such a comparative studies or not. We need to just think elaborately and in detail. This is where I stop.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm looking at the clock also. So again, all three papers so far, very good. They have a lot of potential. Shravani, I was listening also to the comparison. I agree with Surya sir, but also would like to highlight how this lack of community engagement, the attitude towards street vendors. It's unfortunate that this has been done across the board in India. They are always removing the traditional, the intangible heritage, all of that aspect. Chandni Chowk also, I think, has its flaws. So we don't seem to have a good model yet anywhere, which doesn't mean that what you've outlined would not be a good model. You've got the problems you've highlighted. Let's look for the solutions also. Maybe that can be one of the things we look at in another of the symposiums, the future symposium, finding solutions to some of the issues that have been raised in these 2 days, 6th and 7th.
Yeah,
Let's
I
go on
would.
to the next paper.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would mention that even the model also itself need not be there at all. There is nothing called model for these contexts. There will be only solution or some
solution.
kind of observation from the context. Yeah, we'll go to the next one.
Yeah, and I think sensitization is essential across the board
Across the
for
board. Yeah.
everyone. Let's go to the next then.
Yeah. Discourses, how they have influenced. It's a good one. I think if she goes through, I think Kavya, if you go through even some of the original sources of the interpretation, be it Jakkanachari, be it because these stories come from some unknown sources and but if you compare with the original sources, what could be the original interpretation and what is popular interpretation? If you go through that, and I think it becomes more further. There is scope for such kind of further research. That is where I stop on this observation. If you have anything to say.
Yeah. So I agree also with whatever Professor Suryamurthy said about the popular interpretations and looking at the sources, and that is what I was going to highlight. So we'll give you all a chance to quickly come back to your points. You see, there is popular narratives are always being fashioned, and then one leads to the next. So there's a little bit of information, and people add on to it, and fact and fiction and faction being written, all of that is happening. So what do the actual historical sources say may be something you want to focus on also, even if you put them in as footnotes, that this is what the source of the history says, this is what the popular narratives and discourses say, this is what the public believes. And we might even find that chronology wise, the 21st century has seen a different direction to the discourses as compared to what was happening there. And I think give them Surya, we give them a moment to respond if they would like to, and then hand it back to Parul, who's waiting very patiently. So all four of our speakers, if you'd like to respond to the points made to you.
I have just one point. So, there was a lot that I missed out of, like which was part of the research. So the Jagannathacharya story from there is a mention in Narasimhacharya's his Keshava of Somnathpura, the book that he writes. about how Jaganacharya might have actually been a set of sculptors rather than one, because the mythos runs for 300 years. So what he kind of says is that it is an adaptation of a local name, which has turned into an oral folk tradition around this temple that has lasted for over 300 years. So, and I mean, there's a little more about even the Sala myth and stuff like that. But I mean, it is interesting. I understand
And
perfectly studying through Vixens.
yeah, yeah. And it's very creditable that after your first degree, you're attending something like this, and this is part of your BA thesis. So please carry on with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bhavyata, Sravani, Aahee, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I
Or you
just
feel
would
you've
like
said it
to
all? Yeah.
I just wanted to share the fact that Professor Surya, your suggestion for line drawings, I had consulted a couple of my professors regarding this so that I could involve myself with conjectural reconstruction of mapping. And they told me that it's actually not an ideal thing to do because somehow it's immoral and does not do justice to the temple. So I was told to not ever involve myself
No,
with
no,
that.
I'm not suggesting about conjectural reconstruction. So if you take Percy Brown, and if you
Yeah,
take if you see Christopher Tadgell, the most recent one, and
yeah.
if you see American Institute of Indian Studies, and if you see Adam Hardy, with how these kind of temple architecture study has brought, and even if you take Kumaraswamy, A.K. Kumaraswamy, the very old 1920s, early 20th century literature, they used these to bring out the fundamental understanding, and especially Adam Hardy and Kumaraswamy. If you look in, and Michael W. Mester, who has done extensive work with M.A. Dake in American Institute of Indian Studies, M.W. Mester, all of these, they used these line drawings not in conjectural restoration or conjectural reconstruction, but bringing out the fundamental evolution and characteristic features of Kashmir temple architecture. Because the glory can be seen, or the real features could be seen only in bits and pieces. And they can be brought out if you bring in these kind of line drawings. That is what is my suggestion, not as a conjectural reconstruction.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Does anybody from the audience have any questions for the speakers, for the presenters? If not, then I guess we can close the session. I would like to thank both the chairs for their valuable comments and to the presenters as well. This was a great learning experience for me too. And I hope you carry on. I hope you carry on with the good work that you're doing. Anything anybody would like to say as a closing remark? Both of chairs.
I think what I would like to mention is in all cases, especially whatever the fundamental work, and all of them have focus when they have presented, and their presentations have certainly focus, and keep continuing your work and bring out some original work from your research. That is because especially Bhavyata and Aahee, they have a lot of scope in this, and even Kavya's work also has a different angle of observation, how history and popular sources, and our Sravani's presentation also needs evaluation, kind of what kind of evaluation we do for implementation of projects, and how do we review. what is essential for India and what do we need to do, because it is good to understand in this INTACH Charter of 20 years. And yesterday's Professor A.J.K. Menon's talk and also Professor Arun Menon, they mentioned about the context and relevance, the continuity and relevance in conservation of heritage in India, where continuity of life, continuity of the heritage is going to be the main thing, and how relevant it is in terms of the models from the West or the Venice Charter, Bara Charter, what we talk about. So these things shall be kept in mind, and your original researches grounded to India, grounded to your fundamental the primary source of observation is going to play a major role in bringing out this kind of original research. So this is where I would stop and over to the organizers.
Okay, my comment I've put on the chat box also. I've thanked the speakers, of course, but I'll just read that out. Added to Surya's thing, and we're happy with what good presentations, but looking forward to the future outcomes. So whatever you're doing, carry on doing it, and we look forward to a really brilliant, innovative works that follow from what you've been doing, what you've already done. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the people listening in on this session. Back to you from both the session chairs now, Parul.
Thank you, Dr. Hooja. Thank you, Professor Murthy. I would now request all the presenters to turn on their video so that we can take a group picture.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Right. Thanks.